Hi, this is Rob. I'm going to show you how to do the exercises that go along with the video lesson, graphing on the coordinate plane. Are you ready? Let's go. For our first 4 problems, we're going to use this graph right here on the right. All right, so for problem 1, we have what are the coordinates of point A and what quadrant is it in? All right, well here's point A right here. So we need to find out the coordinates of it, where it's located on the coordinate plane. So we need to find the x value and the y value. A good way to do that is to imagine a line going from the point directly to each of the axes. And it has to go straight there so it ends up being perpendicular with that axis. I'll go ahead and actually draw in a dotted line for point A here so we can see that. And you can either just imagine it or draw it on the paper if you want. But we can see that it lines up with 5 on the x-axis. So our first coordinate is 5. Put a comma there. And then a dotted line to the y-axis. And so we see that it ends up at 3 on the y-axis. So the coordinates are 5, 3, and the quadrant it's in. The quadrants are numbered starting in this quadrant here, at being quadrant 1, and both the x and the y are positive in this quadrant. And then we go counterclockwise. This is quadrant 2, and in this quadrant, the x is negative, y is positive. Keep going counterclockwise. This is quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. So this is quadrant 1, and we normally write them with Roman numerals. So I'm putting a big capital I for quadrant 1. All right, for problem 2, we have what are the coordinates of point B and what quadrant is it in? So here's point B. So once again, we want to see where it lines up on these two axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. So we do a dotted line to the x-axis. That was pretty easy to see just by itself, didn't really need a dotted line, but it's -7, comma, and then over to the y-axis, and that is -2. So it's -7, comma, -2 for the coordinates, and the quadrant, remember, it's 1, 2, 3. Quadrant 3 in Roman numerals. Problem 3 is what are the coordinates of point C and what quadrant is it in? So here's point C, and we need to find where it is on the x-axis and the y-axis. Don't really need to draw in a line there to see that it lines up with the -4 on the x-axis. -4. Then on the y-axis, see it lines up with 1. You don't actually have to draw in the dotted lines if you don't want. So we have -4, 1, and the quadrant it's in is quadrant 2. For number 4, what are the coordinates of point D and what quadrant is it in? Here's point D, and the coordinates for it, let's see, we go up here, so 3 on the x-axis, and -6 on the y-axis. -6, 3, -6, and this is quadrant 4, and the Roman numerals for quadrant 4 is I and a V. 1 less than 5, V stands for 5. Those are all the coordinates and the quadrants of points A, B, C, and D. For problems 5 through 8, we'll be using this graph right here. For problem 5, we need to plot this coordinate on the graph and label it point H. And we have the coordinates 5, 0. Let's do the technique we learned in the video where we imagine the point starting at the origin. And then for our first coordinate number, the 5, we move it 5 in the x-axis, and then 0 in the y-axis, so we don't move it up or down from there. We leave it right on the x-axis. And we're going to label that point H. There's an H. That's point H at 5, 0. Okay, so for problem 6, we need to plot this coordinate on the graph and label it point I. And we have -3, 3. So we imagine that our point starts at 0, and we go -3 on the x-axis, and then +3 on the y-axis, so up to 3, +3, and there's our point, and that's going to be labeled point I. All right, for problem 7, we need to plot this coordinate on the graph and label it point J. And we have 0, 6. So we start with a point at 0, and we move it 0 along the x-axis, so we leave it there, and then we move it 6 up in the y-axis. 6, right there is our point, and we label it J. For problem 8, we need to plot this coordinate on the graph and label it point K. We have -5, -7. So let's start with their point at 0 and move it -5 in the x-axis and then -7 in the y-axis. You can see here that it lines up with the -7 there. And it lines up with the -5 there. And so that is going to be point K. Okay, and so here are points H, I, J, and K.